Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we know people are joining us from different parts of the world. My name is Pradeep Nayak. I'm part of the V2b Global Partnership here, but I'm also a associate professor at the University of Waterloo in Canada. I would do a few rounds of introduction here before I pass it on to our distinguished speaker. First, I will introduce the V2b Global Partnership, and then I will introduce the thematic webinar series, and I will then introduce our speaker today before I hand it over to our speaker. So just a few words about the V2b Global Partnership. The Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership is a transdisciplinary research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 members from Africa, Asia, and internationally, and as well as Canada. The goal of the global partnership is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability. And the way we understand vulnerability and viability is not just in an economic sense, but also to include the ecological, the political, the cultural, social, and other aspects of small-scale fisheries community life. Our focus is fourfold here. The first objective of this partnership is to co-create and co-produce the knowledge that can help the small-scale fisheries to transition from vulnerability to viability. The second objective is to create a repository that can be used by multi-level stakeholders in focusing on the work on the transition from B2B. The third is to build multi-level transdisciplinary capacities, so right from the community level to the policy and the academia and all other actors and stakeholders. The fourth objective is to synthesize and integrate the co-produced knowledge in a way that can help in practice, policy, and theory building, so that overall it can lead to governance of small-scale fisheries in a viable manner. The V2b Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small-scale fisheries and engage collaboratively with small-scale fisher communities and other key NGO, government, university partners to enhance small-scale fisheries viability. We are conducting, as I already mentioned, transdisciplinary community engaged research in 6 countries in Asia. That includes Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, and 6 countries in Africa. That includes Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. In doing this work, the V2b Global Partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing global change impacts on small-scale fisheries. The V2b thematic webinar series, for which we have gathered here today, is an initiative of the V2b Global Partnership to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries. The goal is to feature academics, government representatives, practitioners, and members of the civil society who have made significant contributions to the theoretical, practical, and policy aspects of small-scale fisheries, both locally and globally. V2b thematic webinar series takes place on the last Friday of every month, and it will be so throughout 2022. The series is available internationally through live streaming on YouTube. Details regarding the monthly webinar, including speakers, topics, and titles, and links to webinar platform is available at our website, which is www.v2bglobalpartnership.org. Today's webinar is the fifth in the series of V2b thematic webinars planned for the year 2022, and the 17th since we started first in January 2021. And it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Milena Arias Skraber as our distinguished speaker today. Dr. Arya Skreber is a marine social sciences researcher at the School of Global Studies in the University of Gothenburg, Sweden. She also holds a Marie Skłodowska-Curie Fellowship at the Department of Applied Economics, C Lab, in the University of Santiago de Compostela, Spain. Dr. Arya Skreber is currently an active member of the V2b Global Partnership in her capacity as a research collaborator. Her research has focused on the values and governance of small-scale fisheries in the Baltic Sea and social dimensions of ecosystem-based management and fisheries job satisfaction and motivations to fish. In Sweden, she is studying the potential of seafood relocalization and pluriactivity for the valorization of small-scale fisheries in coastal rural development. In Spain, she is working on the identification and analysis of socio-cultural contributions to coastal communities, especially the Galician women who are on foot selfish collectors. Dr. Arias Skreber has written and published extensively on various aspects of small-scale fisheries, including blue economy, blue justice, interactive governance, social dimensions of ecosystem-based management, fisheries conflicts, legal and policy frameworks, and community economics, all aimed at creating viable small-scale fisheries communities. It is my honor today to invite Dr. Milena Arias-Skreber to deliver today's talk for the V2b thematic webinar series 2022. And her title of the talk would be "The Words We Need for the Ocean We Share Now, New Concepts for the Viability of Small-Scale Fisheries." Thank you very much for joining us today, Milena, and the floor is yours now, please.
Okay, thank you, Prateep, for this introduction to myself, and thank you also for giving me the opportunity to be in this webinar series. Yes, I am Milena, and let's start with this presentation. Okay. I will start this presentation with these images about what we do know from the oceans, and in this case from media. And we can see that there are many concepts here in these images that explains to us what is happening in the oceans. Some examples of these concepts are, you can see here, water pollution, overfishing, coral bleaching, massive oil spills, what else? Ocean acidification, plastic pollution. And we know, or we all have at least some idea on what do we mean when we talk about this concepts that I just mentioned. At least some of us, at least most of us, know that this is bad things happening to the ocean. And so in general, we have a good idea from media on what is happening in the ocean. And the question that I want to present to you today is what do we know about what's happening with the people in the ocean? My friend and colleague Svein Jentoft called this people above water, because this was a reaction to what SDG 14 people below water. Sorry. Life below water, SDG 14 means. So it's not enough just to know what is happening below the water. We also want to know what is happening above the water. Okay, so we all know that humans are impacting the oceans, and if we do a very quick search on concepts on Google Scholar matches, we find that concepts, the ones that we also have in the media, ocean acidification, for example, more than 78,000 matches. Marine plastic pollution maybe is a concept that is a little bit new still. 5,000 around. Overfishing, much older topic, 122 matches in Google Scholar. Sea level rise, more than 600,000, and marine pollution as well, more than 500,000. So, but then we also want to know how are humans impacting fishing communities? And then I had a look about ocean grabbing, for example, and 800 Google Scholar matches, and coastal gentrification. So in general, we have significantly lower levels of matches in Google Scholar on topics that are related to what is happening with fishing communities or on the coasts. And to be honest, I didn't find more concepts that describe what was happening with life above water. So we have maybe 3 possible conclusions after these slides, just 2 slides. First, that maybe we are publishing too little about what is happening to people in the ocean. This is people in the ocean, we will see later. We are missing concepts to communicate what is happening with these people in the ocean. And if the concepts are there, they are not popularized in the media, at least as often as we found them in everyday newspapers or magazines that are not research journals. So the work I will present today navigates around the conclusions or ideas I just presented to you and are captured in a publication co-authored with Ratana Shumpakdi from Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada, and Svein Jevntov from the Arctic University of Norway. The publication is open access and has the title Blue Justice and the Co-Production of Hermeneutical Resources for Small-Scale Fisheries. And we start explaining in this paper why do we need to talk about blue justice for small-scale fisheries. Well, blue justice is a counter-narrative to the blue growth and blue economy strategies or agendas, tries to withstand these agendas by focusing on the centrality of small-scale fisheries and social justice in sustainable ocean development. So the idea is just to focus on the importance of bringing the small-scale fisheries, who is not always, at least in the case of blue growth in Europe, is not part of the blue growth agenda. So to bring back small-scale fisheries to these agendas, and at least besides other activities, economic activities in the oceans like biotechnology, what else do we have? Shipping, wind energy, and coastal tourism. And we start explaining this paper on why do we need blue justice. But when we thought that to study blue justice, we need to understand the type of injustices in the context of small-scale fisheries. And for this, we decided to use as a theoretical framework the work of philosopher Amanda Fricker and her book named Epistemic Justice from 2007. And Fricker says that epistemic injustice refers to a wrong done to someone in her capacity or his capacity as a knower or transmitter of knowledge. There are two types of epistemic injustices. One is called testimonial injustice, and the second one is called hermeneutical injustice. For the first case, Fricker talks about cases when people attribute more or less credibility to a statement based on prejudice about the speaker's gender, social background, race, or ethnicity, or any other category. And this is done because of their identity. And she uses as an example an old woman who is visiting a doctor, and the doctor doesn't take attention to what she's saying because she's just an elderly woman. And she could be suffering or could be really sick, but because, let's say, discrimination towards her, the doctor doesn't listen. The second case is called hermeneutical injustice, and these are cases when someone's experiences are not well understood by themselves or by other people's because these experiences do not fit any concept known to them or to the others. For hermeneutical injustice, Fricker touches the case of the concept of sexual harassment, and she explains that sexual harassment has been always present in working environments where they men and women together. But the women who were victims of sexual harassment could not talk openly about what was happening to them, and preferred to talk about this in bathrooms or like a kind of a gossip, because it was a bit, they were ashamed of what was happening. And many women preferred to just quit their jobs before trying to explain what had happened to them. And Fricker explains that it was until the concept of sexual harassment, when it was introduced, then the whole thing changed, because once you had the concept, you can first freely talk about it, and then the people can be accused, and then people can be also punished if they are committing sexual harassment. So if you remember, one of our first questions was what is happening to fishing communities or life above water? Then we ask, are there epistemic injustice in the context of small-scale fisheries? Do we have concepts to describe them? And can social scientists improve global narratives for small-scale fisheries viability? And you will see in this presentation that I have still at least some answers to the first three, but the fourth question is still for the next years, we hope. How do we did that? To answer these questions, we collected 20 case studies from the TBTI information system on small-scale fisheries, and this information was part of the contributions to an open call launched in 2019 with the goal to gather stories and examples of policies, programs, projects, initiatives, regulatory frameworks, as well as other situations that create different types of injustice and inequalities in small-scale fisheries. So people started to send their information about this, and the first 20 we selected, we read them, and then we identified key paragraphs in these narratives and divided them into themes, and after that we suggested concepts that could communicate the unjust experience described in this narrative. After that, we compiled the concepts in a glossary, in the form of a glossary. This is just an example of one of the stories. They are still available. This is not part of our stories, these are a new one. So after the 20 that arrived to the TBTI web platform, there are many other people have been continuing sending these stories, and this one is about Peninsula Valdez in Argentina, and it's about how in 1999 there was the UN World Heritage. The UN established a World Heritage Place in this peninsula in Argentina, and without any consultation to the local fishing communities living there. And the problem is that when they created this, it is protected area, marine protected area. A lot of tourism started to flourish in the area, and the fishermen who had been all their life taking care, let's say, of this. They have whales and many nice species there. When this well-intended, I will say, heritage site, and they introduced new rules, so the fishermen lost their power to create their own rules that had been allowed in the past to protect or take care of many species that are around this peninsula. And now tourism industry comes and take advantage of this area, and the fishermen lose their power to regulate anything else there. So those are the kinds of stories that we were reading from what was sent to the platform. This is the list of the stories that we read. We cover more or less 40,000 fishermen, but that's tricky because 20,000 were already from Myanmar. But geographically, we just took the 21st contributions, but they were from many places, from Senegal, Australia, Mexico, Bangladesh, Brazil, Costa Rica, Philippines, etc., etc. And they all describe kind of injustices in these small-scale fisheries. Then we read all those stories, and as I said, and then we pick some themes and provide some concepts to explain what was happening with these communities. So, for example, the authorities also alluded that levies would stay as they were as a way to discourage uncontrolled fishing that might lead to the exploitation of resources. So the authorities, just because they are small-scale fisheries, the authorities immediately assume that they will overexploit the resources, without any basis for that. Just because they are fishermen, small-scale fishermen, it's clear that they will overexploit the resources. And we call this ecological bullying. Enforcement agencies disproportionately targeted fisherfolk who can at least afford. And we call this discrimination fisherophobia. So for some reason, some agencies just do not like the fishermen, just for being fishermen. In 1990, when the national park was established, the residents adjacent were not consulted. Few meetings were held, mostly to inform of Protected Area Management Board decisions. So just decisions. Fishermen were invited to participate with them, but it was just to get the decisions made by the management board. And we call this participatory domination. We have some more examples. In deep for the implementation of this project, new leaders were created with the establishment of new local authorities, which enter into conflict of jurisdiction with those who traditionally represented fishing communities. We call this experience cultural violation. The working and living conditions of queer-paying fishers are clearly below Myanmar's minimum labor requirements. We call this marine peonage. And the last one, researchers found that deep sea fishing is declining due to large-scale fisheries occurring in spaces who were traditionally occupied by small-scale fisheries. We call this industrial pillaging. After we had our concepts, we created this glossary. And in this glossary, for example, we put each of the concepts have an explanation. Cultural violation, any action that roughly takes hold of marine and coastal cultural assets or values. Ecological or environmental bullying, the deliberate seek to molest, harm, intimidate, or coerce small-scale fishers through a repeated verbal, physical, and/or social behavior justified by the protection or conservation of the marine environment. Fisherphobia or misophalia, the attitudes or beliefs that small-scale fisheries people are inferior in relation to other fishers or social groups. Industrial pillaging, the acts by large-scale, massive, profit-efficient industries or corporations of stealing something from a fishing community or a small-scale fisher. Recreational assault, action or attitude that disadvantages small-scale fishers as a result of recreational fishing. Here is the list of all at the end we finished with 13 concepts, and they are now in the TBTI webpage. They are available for everyone who wants to read them or know them, and until now they have been translated to Japanese and Spanish, and we have 2 volunteers who will do it in Vietnamese and in Arabic. So if there's someone here in the audience who wants to volunteer to translate this glossary to other languages, that will be very much appreciated. So summing up, we've found evidence that epistemic injustice in its 2 variants has been harming small-scale fisheries long before Fricker's book, and actually long before Blue Economy and Blue growth agendas were established. There is a need to provide new concepts to interpret social experiences in the context of small-scale fisheries. This work suggests 13 concepts, but they are in no way exhaustive. There are many more, and they can also be probably improved. By the way, the three authors who imagine these concepts were not, their mother tongue was not English, so I think it would have been a bit easier having a native English speaker helping us with these concepts. But we did the best we could. Transdisciplinary is needed. This is the result of transdisciplinary work. Without transdisciplinary, we couldn't have known what was happening with these fishermen. So it is needed for cultivating practices for a fair and equitable treatment for all knowers. The fishermen are, of course, knowers, we know that. Listen with patience and eliminate discrimination. Research on if and how new concepts can enter discourses of sustainable ocean development is needed, but at least knowing your enemy by the name is half the battle. I will skip this one. Sorry. Next steps. This is just a very, very quick brainstorming on what we can do after this. In terms of research, we would like to know if these concepts can be used in research, and it would be nice if we coordinate this among researchers so that we use the same ones. But how coordinate this, we don't know. How are the concepts conceived, and how concepts in general, how are they conceived, and how do they enter ocean global agendas? Some research on that would be also nice. Do concepts empower vulnerable people? That's also an empirical question for the future. In regards to activism, we would like to know how can we bring these concepts back to fishing communities, to whom, and if they will be, and how, if they can somehow use them or accept them or like them. And the last question, how can the media get interested in also popularizing these concepts? And with this, I finish my presentation for today. Many thanks to everyone to listen to me, and I am happy to listen to all your comments and to your questions too. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Milena. That was a very clear articulation of how to approach blue justice, through looking at various concepts, and all of them are kind of derived from the case studies that you talked about, but also very rooted in a specific context and oriented towards small-scale fisheries experiences in the world. So this is really great in terms of showing us a path forward to engage in blue justice, blue economy kind of discourses, but also with a focus to a justice approach, in how issues of vulnerability and viability, can be addressed and responded to. So thank you very much. So the floor is open now for questions, and the way this works is, we receive the questions from our audience who are on the YouTube, on our chat, and I will try to read them out to you so that everybody knows the question, and then please feel free to respond to those questions. So I see that there are already questions here. So the first question is from Sophia. So Sophia is writing, "This is so interesting, Milena. which of these concepts were totally new and how many which were adopted from other disciplines, fields like land grabbing, ocean grabbing, and all. So,
no, we didn't look at ocean grabbing. I think it was after we put the names that we started to look for new names. So all the names are new. If I go back to them, I can tell you where they come from. Yeah, eco-harassment could come from sexual harassment. I mean, it was a hard word to find. I think that's the most difficult part of this exercise was to find. We changed them quite a lot, and we are still not very happy with some of them. They also should be easy when we thought that they could finish, hopefully one day in the media. So they should be not very, yeah, a bit catchy. When you think about water pollution, it's a bit easy when you think, but even coral bleaching, and so there is a balance between which words to use. But all these recreational, yeah, maybe just except from eco-harassment, who came from sexual harassment, is the one that we got inspired, at least, from other concepts.
yeah, and it's really within the scope of a paper. It is probably almost next to impossible to find out the roots of all of this new, the concepts. Because they might exist in some of the literatures, but needs a kind of, scan deeper into the literature, So, but these are really nice set of concepts that kind of, brings out, new perspectives to understand, the issues of injustice. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question from TBTI Global. And Milena has already referred to TBTI Global, which is too big to ignore, and a large network working and doing wonderful work on small-scale fisheries. And the question is, the fact that the three authors are not native English speakers might actually be a good thing. Otherwise, there might be language domination and injustice. That's a great question.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yes, maybe that was an advantage, but we don't know. Maybe. I just was going to come back a little to what you said about all these injustices placing. So we found it very common. We found patterns in these stories, and one is marine protected areas. It's a problem with small-scale fisheries. We all know, and it's in many papers. But we don't have a name to a concept. How and it's difficult to imagine it. So, do we need fishing communities protected areas or something like that? It is difficult, and you need really to have a clear mind. But I agree that maybe it was helpful that we were not native speakers. Yeah, thank you. Nice comment.
Yeah, but that's a really good question that triggers many thoughts. In terms of how to take this wonderful work forward. Could be if somebody engages in real empirical work using these new terms, one would be interested not to understand these concepts not from an English speaker's perspective, but also to look at how these communities would like to use the term. What is the community term that can explain these new concepts that you have come up with? So this is one approach that you have taken, that how to explain in the mainstream academia so that it is these are conceptually rich and provides a meaning. But the other aspect is what meaning, what concepts, what terms, small-scale fisheries, communities would like to use to explain and verbalize and provide expression to these experiences, of injustice. So that would be a kind of ongoing work and related work that can be done. Okay, so moving on to the next question by Alida Bundy. Thank you for the presentation, Milena. Do you have a vision for number one, how these new concepts will help SSF people, and how to research this question?
Yes. The first one is that I was listening to a presentation some time ago about one fisheries organization in Ecuador who had to present a motion, I think it's called, or to the government, and they were asked, did you work with the scientists to mobilize? And these women said, we normally do not work with scientists, but in this case, when we had to write to the government, we asked the researchers because we were missing the words that could explain in their language, in government language, what we were asking for. And that inspired me to think, yeah, maybe that's where we can help. So not maybe bringing these concepts to all fishermen, but fisheries organization or fisheries movements that, as this woman said, we're missing the words to explain their experiences or their frustrations in this case as well. So I think that's replies to the first question, and how to research on it. Yeah, going there and see if it works. I guess it will be a matter of time to see if this paper is fun, because it was kind of also of an experiment. Can we just throw these concepts and see if they will never be used, will take part someone? Because it's very difficult when you target, okay, we'll try to target this group. For the moment, the strategy is just leaving that to everyone and hope that someone will make use of them.
And it really works well because you need to kind of break it down. So blue justice, blue economy, these concepts have come as pretty heavily loaded with stuff that we really don't know much about. So the glossary really helps to kind of get into the nitty-gritties of what does blue injustice or blue justice comprise of. So this could be a good starting point in terms of looking at different perspectives and different so the glossary is helpful, that but then what we're hearing through these questions, including Alida's question, is what else needs to be done in terms of research to make them more concrete, make them more applied, make them policy oriented, and those kind of things. Thank you very much for those questions and the answers from Milena. And then I'm going to the next question by Ajibade Matthew. From my own research on SSF in Nigeria, most of the SSF fishers are tired of their occupation because of declining levels of catch every day. Do you have any suggestions for improvement? In other words, how this glossary can help the experiences that these Nigerian fishers are going through and stay in fisheries.
So you have to first to understand clearly what is the problem there. That would be my proposal. So they are, I think they are tired because the catches are going down, something like that.
Yeah, declining levels of catch every day, so they don't get enough fish.
Yeah. That's a tricky one too. What they feel when this happens. What is the frustration? Is it about money? Is it about food? Is it about the place they are missing? And then trying maybe to find who is causing this. And it is industrial fisheries, and then it's a case of marine pillaging, for example. But yeah, I think the secret is to try to really work with these fishermen, and as in the theory says, what is the experience that they must be feel. He said they are tired, no, but they have this feeling. How can you put this feeling into words? And just in one concept that can capture this feeling of being fed up, this feeling of frustration that they have. Yeah. And then you have the concept, and then you bring it to the whole country and put it in all the media. And at some point, those things, if it is, for example, large-scale fisheries and marine pillaging, then maybe one day marine pillaging will be by law not allowed, like in the case of sexual harassment. All these things that we have in the list, maybe one day they will be by law not allowed, and there will, then you can put the people who are practicing fisherophobia or eco-bullying to jail. But that's that's too much for the moment. Yeah.
And that is what is being asked in many questions. And my next question from Derek Armitage actually relates to that. So the question about how you apply these to different domains related to small scale fisheries. So policy domain is one of them, and an important one. So Derek is writing, thank you for the thoughtful talk. The idea of words and by extension the stories and narratives we use is very important. Can you reflect on how these narratives and greater sensitivity to new words and concepts can be integrated into or influence decision making and policy contexts, or in ways to support viability?
Yes, this is a very important question, of course. So when we see again policies for ocean development, there are stories. So there are always discourses, narratives, who make why do we need to stop coral bleaching because the species disappear, and don't do not malinterpret me that I'm not saying that those concepts of coral bleaching they are bad. It's wonderful, and thanks God we have them. But we have to create these stories that the fishermen are telling us. There are also stories that could be part of those narratives that feel policy agendas. So the stories are there, actually. At least the fishermen have them stories. So we have to, or we should capture them, put them a name, and bring them to policies and to the media and to the real world. And now, how do we do that? It's not easy because there are lots of power relations. I mean, groups won't like to put these narratives in the policies, but it's kind of a battle of powers, yes. And that's why the question, can we empower? When you empower, you change power relations. But there's always opposition. And to be honest, I don't have the clear answer now on how can we do this.
Maybe I can ask a follow-up question on Derek's and your answer to that. So when you say there is opposition, and so there is a lot of churning that takes place. When you bring in a new concept. So what is the process going forward in really situating these key concepts, the 13 concepts that you have come up as a glossary, to really situate them in different domains impacting small-scale fisheries? Say the policy domain is something that you were just talking about, but also there are other domains, the market, the sociocultural context, and the environmental context. So there is a lot of other domains within which small-scale fishery exists and interacts with. So how can we situate these glossary terms, in those different domains, so that it really becomes more applied than than conceptual.
So my idea was first also to start with research. If we can, I put it in one slide, if we can coordinate, because as I said, we always talk about, there are many papers telling how marine protected areas are causing some problems to small-scale fisheries. Then we have wind farming is now in Europe also a problem. So there are some patterns. So if we can all put a concept to this and start to write our papers using the same concepts, that would be a first step. But that's the research area, which is not always the one who the policies the policymakers use. But at least among us, and to know what are we talking about in eco-harassment or eco-bullying and things like that. And last time I presented this presentation, there was one nice scientist. He said he was going to write a paper about eco-bullying. It was so nice. But yeah, and to other areas, media, I have no idea how you approach media. Education, you could bring this glossary to schools, maybe. So the fishing communities, obviously, fishing organizations, maybe, yeah, any event where some small-scale fisheries, they could bring this glossary as well. Education, as I said, maybe social media as well. Yeah.
And the work that you just mentioned of translating this into different other languages would automatically take it to new frontiers. So it would be used by other a host of other people, not necessarily academics, but so that translation is a step towards making it more applied, probably. And definitely there is something that some of these networks, like TBTI, which is doing a lot, so we could think of strategies in terms of how to take such a glossary forward and make it more applied through our work in V2b, and we know other similar networks are working globally, and it would be really nice set of activities to make this glossary applied, and therefore make them able to contribute to policy practice and action and advocacy and other aspects of SSF work. There are two comments with regard to the discussion that we were just having and your responses. One from Ali Shal. Ali was writing, organizing regional workshops for a restitution of insights coming from different disciplines with the situational analysis work could be a good starting towards promoting transdisciplinarity. So it's providing ideas about how to take this forward. And then I'm just trying to read it. I'm sorry, I'll have to scroll up. Okay, Alida says, thank you, Milena, great answers. It would be interesting to develop a monitoring plan to evaluate how these terms are adopted and used. So that is a great suggestion again. And then we have TBTI. I am not sure whether this is a question. I will just read it and let's see if this is a question. It will be great if we could test the glossary and further develop it in the V2b case studies. Yes, definitely. It's already kind of playing in my head as you were presenting. This would be a really, really great area to work. And then Aliu's comment, we are in ease with all these concepts that we find relevant in the Senegalese, as each is illustrated by a concrete fact on the ground. Yeah, adding more, examples, and making it more, readable and acceptable to So, for example, if you give it to an artist, so they can draw images of these injustices, that
Exactly.
represent each of this glossary, and we have people that we know who do wonderful work around art and nonverbal communication to bring expression to these concepts, in a different way. So there's a lot of nice ideas. I don't have questions that I see. But maybe I can, ask you one particular, it's not a question, but I just want to explore a little bit, about this glossary. So your glossary is focused on epistemical, injustice. So it is basically focused on the notion of justice or injustice in small-scale fisheries. If you explore other aspects of small-scale fisheries, say for livelihoods, mobility issues like migration, ecological degradation, various other issues that small-scale fisheries might be facing, and think of creating glossaries, similar glossaries in each of those areas or aspects of small-scale fisheries, then two things are going to happen. One, of course, we are able to find ways to understand the issues and prospects in small-scale fisheries through these glossaries, which is great. But at the same time, it may be very confusing because we have so many concepts and terms and ways of knowing things, which is not necessarily bad. I'm a strong believer in diversity of knowing and ways to know. But what is your reflection? How do you react to if somebody challenges us, of creating so many terms and quote unquote, many people would see them as jargons. What would be our answer to them, in terms of this glossary?
I was, at some point, I was thinking that, yes, we don't want many because then we get a little bit lost. We should at least start with some of them. Actually, when we started this paper, we thought to have 3 or 4. And maybe that could have been a better, we will never know, strategy, to go deeper into 3 or 4. Find images, as you said, very, very important. I was going to mention that, but I'll skip it. And there are also, for example, when you look at concepts in environmental science, there are also concepts that give you the solution or kind of an idea, like habitat restoration, for example. If we could also use some words to not just explaining the injustices, but as you said, to bring it to other domains. So maybe we could also concentrate on concepts that explain the solutions for the problems that are affecting small-scale fisheries. But that would be my.
Thank you. And I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but it just your presentation has opened
everyone. I mean, we are happy to listen all the comments and all the people who wants to work with it, who has some ideas. Just send us an email or we are all open and need ideas, need brains, need to work together, because otherwise this will finish in a paper that
no, definitely, and this really brings the energy and the interest back. I would say the first step is we should go back and read the paper again, if we have not done, read it, and then maybe some of the things that you have already presented would be clear in the narratives of the paper itself. So that's great. So I don't see any other questions, and I would like to kind of bring to an end in that case. We have a few minutes left, but that's fine. Going home early is always good. And so I would and then bring it to an end by saying a huge thank you from all of us to Milena for making the time and this wonderful presentation, and really as you saw opening up many areas of discussion as far as blue justice and questions about injustice in small-scale fisheries are concerned. And for us, from vulnerability to viability, the questions of injustice and justice in small-scale fisheries are paramount, because they are integrally related to issues of vulnerability and viability, and the possibilities of transition to viability or resilience. So we would continue to engage in this kind of work. And definitely, you and your co-authors and through this paper have inspired us to take on more on understanding the justice and injustice issues in small-scale fisheries. We'll continue this discussion, of course, but thank you to you once again, and thanks to the audience for this wonderful set of questions and engaging with Milena, who is our speaker today. So thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I forgot. Seville, are we still live? Okay, so if you are there, please stay on. We need to announce the next webinar. If Seville, you could bring up the poster. So I'm sorry, I just forgot in the excitement of these glossaries and the wonderful work that the co-authors have done. So the next month we have our webinar series by Dr. Jessica Blythe from the Brock University in Canada. And Jessica is going to talk about transformations towards ocean equity and blue justice. Nice follow from this month's talk. So we invite you all to join us for the webinar next month. Thank you.